beautiful smile. For some, it was a gentle reprimand.
Sairam, brother, I think you're on mute. Yeah. Sai Ram. Thanks, brother. Om Shri Sai Ram. Offering my most humble and loving pranams at the lotus feet of our beloved Bhagawan, respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, Sai Ram to all. On behalf of the alumni of Sri Sathya Sai Educational Institutions, I cordially welcome you all to the 5th edition of Samarpan program in Toronto, organized by the alumni of Swami's institutions. This is indeed a special evening for all of us to recollect, relive our ever cherished memories of the most wonderful moments spent with the Lord. It also helps us in recreating within our minds His actions, the divine Leelas, pranks, and His words, so that it takes us back to those golden days. This way, it helps in sharing the joy and immerse ourselves into the ocean of Ananda with the entire Sai family. Samarpan is an offering of love and gratitude to our beloved Bhagwan, which helps in transforming both the speaker and the listener. Today, for the 5th edition of the Samarpan program, we have brother Balaramachandran, also called as BRC, speaking to us from Chennai. Brother BRC joined the Sri Sathya Sai Seva organizations, Trichur, Kerala, in the early 1990s. He was part of the Kerala Bhajan Group and was blessed to sing in the divine presence multiple times during the auspicious occasions of Onam and Vishu at Prasanthi Nilayam and Brindavan. Brother BRC completed his BCom honors and Masters of Financial Management during 1994 to 1999 period at Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Prasanthi Nilayam. He was blessed with a gold medal in management directly from Bhagawan in 1999. He was also fortunate to be part of the Prasanthi Bhajan Group throughout his studentship there. He is currently part of the famous Sundaram Bhajan Group. Sundaram, as you may all know, is the Swami's abode in Chennai. One most wonderful thing that I recollect about Brother BRC is Swami used to call him parrot voice. Professionally, BRC is the Vice President in the HR Learning and Development Wing for one of India's leading banks. Brother BRC is an excellent speaker and a soulful singer. Personally, I recollect looking up to Brother BRC when Swami gave an opportunity to be part of the Sundaram Bhajan Group for a very short period of time, and be it the several bridge across time recording sessions in Bangalore or Chennai, or the alumni music program that was offered to Swami in both Prasanthi Nilayam and Chennai. His inspiring words, intertwined with nectarine voice, have always inspired more love for Sai in the hearts of the listeners. Having said that, I now hand it over to Brother BRC to take us all through his thoughts and experiences and help us experience Swami and in turn get the Ananda. Jai Sai Ram. Over to you, Brother BRC.
Sai Ram, brother. Thanks for the loving words. Sai Ram. Tvameva mata cha pita tvameva tvameva bandhuscha sakha tvameva त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव देवा त्वमेव सर्वं श्री साई देवा. Dear Swami, loving pranams at your lotus feet. Respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, Sai Ram to all of you. Grateful to Bhagawan to be part of this satsang, this Samarpan session. Brother Bharani, who introduced me, made a very pertinent point. He said that in satsang like this, in a Samarpan session like this, or in any satsang for that matter, the beneficiary is both the speaker as well as the listener. To my mind, I am 100% confident that I would benefit from this satsang. It is also my firm belief that any transformation which the listener experiences is nothing to do with me. It's 100% to do with their direct connect with Bhagawan. One of the expectations in the Samarpan session is that students who've had the opportunity to be in Bhagawan's physical presence share the treasures of wonderful experiences that Bhagawan has so mercifully bestowed upon us. And often Bhagawan has told us that the reason why he gave us those experiences, one of the reasons why he gave us those experiences, is to share it with Sai brothers and sisters across the world. But at this point, I must say that any Samarpan speaker is exposed to one particular risk, which I am also exposed to today. So I must call it out as I begin this session. Since the objective of Samarpan session, or the expectation in a Samarpan session, is that you share your experiences with Bhagawan, any Samarpan talk runs the risk of being a bit autobiographical, having a lot of autobiographical content. Inevitably, a lot of the speaker's history seeps into the narration in any Samarpan session. And thus, as we step into this Samarpan session, my heartfelt prayer to Bhagawan is that it should not pan out as the history of the speaker. Swami, may this turn out to be his story, as you always say, or your story. It's like Professor Kasturi says, it's the touch of the one in the play of the many. I would be immensely grateful if at the end of this session, I'm forgotten, the speaker is forgotten, the messenger is forgotten, and only the message is remembered. Only the one around whom and whose message is being spoken about is remembered. Because at the end of the day, the only thing which is worth remembering is him. The only thing which is worth recollecting are his messages. Messengers are incidental, they come and go. And I just hope and pray to Bhagawan that I'm forgotten. My name is forgotten. Even the details of the experiences which I narrate, the autobiographical bit of it is forgotten, and all that registers in the mind of our dear brothers and sisters who are part of the Samarpan session today is his story, his message, and your thoughts revolve around Bhagawan only. When I was thinking about what I should be sharing as part of today's Samarpan session, I felt that I should break it down into 3 broad segments. But this, of course, is just my plan. And Bhagawan at the end of the day knows what is best for all of us. Whatever Bhagawan does, he does with complete awareness and understanding. And subject to his will, I will go through these 3 broad segments. Of course, if his plan is different, we'll go with that flow. A very famous saint in India who is revered as an avatar himself, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, makes a very powerful statement. In fact, he says that the Lord listens to everything. He can listen even to the footfall of an ant. Nothing escapes his attention. This is one quote which has influenced me a lot of times in life, has inspired me a lot of times in life. All the more so because Bhagawan gave me the opportunity to experience the reality of this statement. And thus, as I recollect the experiences that Bhagawan has gifted me with, I thought this may be a wonderful lens through which I view those many experiences. This particular statement that the Lord listens to everything, even the footfall of an ant, became very real to me in the early days when Bhagawan graciously decided to draw the entire family into Bhagawan's divine presence. Like I said a minute before, I'm 100% convinced that I do not have to impress upon this audience the reality of the statement. I'm sure each one of you here have experienced the truth of this statement in your own way. It's just that, like I said a minute before, it's fascinating to see the touch of the one and the play of the many. This is one more way in which Bhagawan has proved to us the reality of this statement. Our family was drawn to Bhagawan many, many years ago. In fact, in the early 1950s, when Prasanthi Nilayam was new, my grandfather and his brothers were on a business trip. And most unexpectedly, as per a divine master plan, were taken by one of their business associates to this small, at that time totally unknown village called Puttaparthi. They reached Puttaparthi at night. They were given accommodation, or they found accommodation in a place which definitely did not look like a place which was meant for accommodation, but essentially they had a roof over their head. In the morning, they woke up to find that they were on the first floor of a cow shed. Those were early days when I believe the accommodation facilities in Prasanthi Nilayam were non-existent. But then, when they went to the mandir on their very first visit, Bhagawan granted them an interview and spoke to the brothers. Of course, there were wonderful things which happened in the interview, but I will not delve into that here. But the interesting bit is, after that, my grandfather visited Bhagawan on many occasions, had the opportunity to be blessed by his darshan in both Brindavan and Prasanthi Nilayam. Bhagawan's photo used to be there in our shrine, right from the time I was born. And it's pretty interesting that as I narrate all these episodes, because we're all working remotely in India, though I'm based technically out of Chennai. I happen to be in my ancestral home in Kerala, where the entire story began. So, there's a wonderful feeling of deja vu as I narrate these experiences to you. So Bhagwan was there in the shrine, but like only Bhagwan can, he was hiding in plain sight. I say hiding in plain sight because his photograph was there in the shrine hall. I have seen it, but yet it was not part of your active memory for so many years, till I would say the early 90s. And the early 90s, Bhagwan decides to re-enter our conscious minds through a very interesting way. There is a teacher who comes in to teach karate to all my brothers and cousins. We are part of a joint family in an ancestral home. The karate classes lasted for only a couple of weeks. But in those couple of weeks, that karate master, who incidentally was also a member of the Sai Samiti, the Sai organization, the Sri Sai Seva Samiti in Trichur in Kerala, a state in the south of India, he, just started speaking about Bhagwan, and memories were revived. And before we knew, we started visiting the Sai Center in Trichur in Kerala. And my father, me, my brother, mother started regularly visiting the Samiti in Trichur for bhajans. And the entire family was drawn in again to Swami's fold. The very first time I had the opportunity to see Bhagwan was in the early 1990s for the occasion of Onam. And that's when physically I was able to see him for the first time. But even before I physically saw him, even before most of the family had physically seen him, there was a wonderful way in which Bhagwan demonstrated the truth in the statement which I narrated some time before, when he said that the Lord listens to everything. He listens to even the footfall of an ant. The Kerala Bhajan Group was given an opportunity to sing in Bhagwan's presence during Onam. And I aspired to sing as part of this group. There was a selection process. By Bhagwan's grace, I was selected to sing one of the bhajans. We were scheduled to visit Puttaparthi. The entire family was supposed to go. Everybody was keen except one person in the family. And that one person in the family who was not very keen was my mother. In fact, due to certain misconceptions that she'd had during her childhood, to her, Swami was not somebody who was divine. In fact, forget believing Swami was divine. She even thought that Swami was not even a genuine spiritual person. So that was her view of Swami. She had some very strong views about Bhagwan due to certain misconceptions. Now, we did not know all this at that point of time. These are things which she narrated to us later. So while I went for the selection for the Kerala Bhajan Group, here is a mother sitting and praying to her favorite deity, Lord Hanuman. And what is she praying? She's praying hard to Lord Hanuman, saying, Lord, may my son not get an opportunity. May he not get selected for singing in Prasanthi Nilayam. But like she says, there was one occasion when the Lord decided to not listen. He listened to that prayer, I'm sure, but he decided not to grant that prayer because his master plan was larger, not just for me, but for her and for the entire family. I got selected as part of the Bhajan group, and then we made a visit to Prasanthi Nilayam. But before that, something very interesting happened. My mother had had a surgery very early in her life, and her uterus had to be removed when she was just about 25 years old because of a medical complication. But there was a cyst which had developed in her ovary. A few days before we visited Prasanthi Nilayam, the doctors had examined her. In fact, she'd gone through a scan, and they found the cyst. The cyst was almost the size of an orange. And they said that, this is something which needs immediate medical attention. We had gone to one of the largest hospitals in our town here, and many of the doctors there were people whom we had known for a long time. You could call them family doctors. She'd gone through a second round of scan, but before the first round and the second round of scan, something again very interesting happens. We were going for the bhajans on Sunday. My mother was very reluctant. The excuse she would give is that she's got household work, but the real reason is because she did not want to come for bhajans because she really didn't believe in Swami's divinity. But since father really pushed her, we went for bhajans. And she attended the bhajan session very reluctantly, sitting somewhere in the bhajan hall. She was right at the back, as far as possible as she could be from Bhagwan's altar. And while a particular bhajan was in progress, my mother still remembers the bhajan. The bhajan was Dasharatha Nandana Rama Daya Sagara Rama. So while that bhajan was in progress, mother feels a terrible pain in her stomach, an unbearable pain. So she could barely kind of, sit there. At some point of time, she had to just get up and then walk away. Now, my father noticed this and thought it was strange and thought it was a breach of discipline to have just, walked out of the bhajan hall while bhajans were in progress. And he did question her as to why she did that. And she explained, saying that, there was a terrible pain and I just couldn't kind of bear it. Now, I don't remember this, but mother tells me that at that point of time, and I was possibly in my 8th or 9th grade in my high school at that point of time. And she tells me that I told her with a lot of conviction, saying, Ma, what would have happened? I think Swami has removed that cyst from your ovary. The next day she goes for her second scan, and the doctors do the scan, and to their utter surprise, they aren't able to see the cyst. But then, just in a couple of days before they'd seen the cyst, and now they're not able to, so they were kind of confused, and they said, hey, this could possibly be because of a gas formation, this could be because of a fault in the equipment, this could be because of anything. So they said, no, you can't take a risk. And the doctors told her that they'll do a laparoscopy, a small procedure. Now, mother knew that if they do a laparoscopy and then do find the cyst and then they decide to go in for an emergency surgery, that would mean that she would not be able to travel to Prasanthi Nilayam. Not that she was keen, but then if she does not travel to Prasanthi Nilayam and there's a medical condition, then the entire family would have to cancel its trip. She knew that I was very keen to sing in Bhagwan's physical presence and she did not want to disappoint me. So just that motherly feeling, that mother instinct caused her to request the doctor, saying, doctor, let's not do this now, because if there is a surgery which has to be performed, then the plans will be entirely cancelled. We are going to Prasanthi Nilayam for the first time and so on. The doctor said, see, from what you're saying, I understand that the place which you wish to visit is very holy, which is very pure, means a lot to you. And thus I promise you that if, there is, a cyst actually there, like it does appear in the scan, we will not perform the surgery now. We will put you on medication. And once you come back from your trip, we'll do the surgery. And thus she agreed for the laparoscopy. And as she was being administered anesthesia, and she was chanting the name of Lord Rama, and that's the, the form of God, which all of us were taught to worship right from birth. In fact, one of our ancestors had built a temple of Lord Rama about a century ago in the place where we stay. So she was chanting the name of Lord Rama, and the anesthetist was right next to her and was asking her, saying, Madam, are you nervous? And she said, no, I'm not nervous. And unknowingly, at that moment, even without her own conscious effort, the chant Ram, 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 Ram got transformed to Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram. Now, that's not something which she ever wanted to chant, but she heard herself chant Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram. And in the place of the anesthetist, the doctor, she saw Bhagawan standing, and Bhagawan held her hand and was telling her, why fear when I'm here? And remember, we had not even seen Bhagawan physically. So she had not seen Bhagawan physically. I had not seen Bhagawan physically. My father had seen Bhagawan physically so many years before. And most of the family had not seen Bhagawan physically. And we had not even made, a prayer to Bhagawan to, for a cure here or anything of that sort. The doctors did the laparoscopy, and then doctors came in and out, and my father was waiting outside the operation theater, and he was wondering what was wrong, and he thought there was a medical complication, and that's naturally there was anxiety. But finally, the senior doctor walked out and he said, I just cannot understand. This is a miracle. Because the cyst is missing. The cyst which we saw in the scan 2 days ago is just missing. All that we can see is a scar, as though it has been freshly operated upon, and the cyst is just missing. So, dear brothers and sisters, this is the first experience that we had of the truth of that statement. The Lord listens to everything, even the footfall of an ant. Here, there was not even a prayer made. But then Bhagawan had listened to it, and Bhagawan had intervened and sent his visiting card. So my mother, who was somebody who did not believe in Bhagawan's divinity, in fact, thought he was fake, totally surrendered at his lotus feet. And in a matter of few days, she was transformed into a devotee who has unflinching faith in Bhagawan. And that was the very first experience which Bhagawan bestowed upon us. And when we went there and mother saw all the students in Bhagawan's physical presence, a desire entered her mind. She felt that me and my brother and I should both study in Bhagawan's educational institutions and become his students. And Bhagawan mercifully answered the prayer, like Brother Bharani shared as part of the introduction. I joined the Brindavan campus at Bangalore of Sri Sathya Science Institute of Higher Learning in the year 1994 for the undergraduate program in commerce. There were wonderful experiences where the truth of that statement came back again, that the Lord listens to everything, even the footfall of an ant. But let me pick and choose and narrate some of them here. I may not necessarily be going in chronological order, but this is the first experience which kind of comes to my memory. This happened, with a classmate of mine. We were roommates, in the dormitory. We stayed in the same dormitory room. This boy was prone to, getting fits and epilepsy, and thus had to be on regular medication. So we used to kind of keep a watch on him. And one of the days he had gone for his bath, and it, kind of took a long time for him to come back. And after some time, we noticed his absence and went looking for him. And somebody figured out that he had gone for his bath. And then we knocked the bathroom door, and we found that there was no response. Finally, we had to break the bathroom door open and found that he was lying there unconscious. We carried him to his room. He was given medical attention, and by Bhagwan's grace, of course, he was fine. He was revived, and he was all right. Something fascinating happened a day or a couple of days after that. We were in Bhagwan's physical presence in his mandir called Trichur Brindavan, and we were there as part of the famed Trayi sessions, where after darshan, Bhagwan used to speak to us sitting on the jula. And it so happened that day, this brother was, kind of seated right next to me. And Bhagawan came in, he sat on the jula. And as he sat on the jula, he leaned forward and he spoke something in Tamil, which is the South Indian language, which is used in Tamil Nadu in Chennai. Now, I hail from Kerala, but my mother tongue is Tamil. So I understand both Malayalam, which is the language used in Kerala, as well as Tamil. But this brother was from Kerala and he didn't really understand Tamil. So I was right next to him. I was his roommate. I had known about this episode, his illness, a couple of days before. So Bhagawan leaned forward and spoke to him. But since he spoke in Tamil, he didn't grasp it, but then I did. And what Bhagawan told him in Tamil was this, and I'll tell you what Bhagawan told in Tamil and I'll translate it for you in English. Bhagawan just said, உனக்கு மருந்து வாங்க பணம் இல்லைனா சுவாமி கிட்ட கேட்க கூடாதா, சுவாமி வாங்கி கொடுக்க மாட்டேனா? Which means, if you do not have money to buy medicines, could you not have asked Swami? Would Swami not have given you the money? And I was shocked. And after the Trey session got over, we were walking out together. I just went up to him, I confronted him, and I told him, saying, brother, from now on, you will not refer to me as a brother. You will not refer to any of us as brothers, because you did not have money to buy medicines. Thus, you did not buy a medicine. You did not have your regular medicines. You were shy to ask any one of us. And thus, because you not had medicines, you had this epileptic fit. So, you call us brothers, but then you have a problem. You're short of money. You don't even tell us. You don't share your problems with us. So never call us brothers again. And he was shocked and he looked at me as though, I was omniscient. And he said, brother, how did you know? And I said, brother, I didn't know. And he said, remember, Swami was telling you something in Sri Brindavan. He was exactly telling you this. And then the brother confessed, saying that's exactly what had happened. He did not have money. His father, there was, for some reason, there was a delay for the monthly allowance reaching him from his family. And he was shy to ask us. And that is how the entire episode had happened. Whenever when I listen to this episode, one bhajan which comes to mind is this, and let me sing this for you. And that, in a sense, captures the essence of Bhagwan's love, which expressed itself through this message. Bhagwan again listened to the footfall of an ant when none of us, even his roommates, had missed it. And that beautiful sense of, motherhood, that love gets captured in this bhajan, which I'd like to sing as part of the satsang. And the bhajan goes like this. He Akhilandeshwari Ma Anath Rakshaki Ma Chamundeshwari Karuna Sagari Chamundeshwari Karuna Sagari Palayama Devi Paripalayama Devi. The next couple of lines, I believe, are very closely related to the experience which I narrated. It's like, the mother, a child singing to the mother, talking about the mother's glory and power. It says, He Tribhuvana Palini Ma He Trishuladharini Ma. It says, oh mother, you are Tribhuvana Palini. You are the one who is the divine power which rules over the three worlds. He Tribhuvana Palini Ma He Trishuladharini Ma. You are the one who has got total control over the three dimensions of time, which is the past, present, and future, because Bhagawan says that Trishula stands for the three dimensions of time, the trident which Lord Shiva holds. He Tribhuvana Palini Ma He Trishuladharini Ma. You're all powerful. You're responsible for ruling the entire world. But yet, Jayama, Jayama, Jayama. Jagadishwari Saima. Partishwari Saima. Mother, you may be busy ruling the entire world. You're responsible for the 3 dimensions of time. But still, at the end of the day, you are my mother. You know that beautiful combination of a Bhagawan, that he is the cosmic Lord, the cosmic mother, responsible for the entire cosmos. At the same time, he listens to the footfall of an ant. He has to ensure that the sun and the moon and the planets and everything work like they ought to work. All the gods are under his supervision, and yet he has time for you and me. And that is our mother, and that is our Swami. He is the biggest amongst the biggest, and yet he is the most personalized. The Lord listens to everything. He listens to even the footfall of an ant. And that was one of my earliest experiences. It's one thing to read about this in a book, but it was something entirely different to witness it live. And like the other ants, I as an ant had my share of experiences in terms of realizing the truth of the statement that the Lord listens to everything. He listens to even the footfall of an ant. And as an ant, let me narrate to you some of the experiences where I know that he listened to me. There are innumerable experiences where he has listened to me, but I'm just not even aware. And that is the truth. And this is something which Bhagawan himself has, mentioned on many occasions. When I joined Bhagawan's institution, my belief was that Bhagawan would speak to every single student, would speak to us, would give us opportunities, because that's what I had seen in all the wonderful videos Bhagawan's interacting, like the one which Brother Bharani played as part of the Samarpan intro, and I thought that I would get that opportunity myself. I think that was pretty unrealistic. I mean, physically, when there are about there are 300 boys in a hostel, it was, I think, unrealistic to expect that Bhagawan would physically interact with each one of us regularly. But that's what I had thought. And I realized that, when I joined, that while, of course, I had Bhagawan's darshan, I knew that Bhagawan was seeing me, I was seeing Bhagawan. That physical proximity, the darshan, sparshan, I was getting darshan, of course. The sparshan and the sambharshan was not something which I wasn't getting. I was not getting it. And that was a great void. It caused a great amount of pain. At some point of time, I really started craving for it. And one of my desires, which I never expressed directly, but then which was a burning prayer in my heart, was that I should receive Bhagawan's touch. And the prayer specifically that was that Bhagawan should place his divine hands on my head and bless me. And that was a prayer which for a long time seemed to be unanswered. But then after some time, I rationalized and I said that, see, it is unrealistic and it is unfair of me to demand Bhagawan's physical attention. And then I reconciled to the fact that, you can't be selfish with Bhagawan's physical presence, because there are so many people to attend to. There is so much of work which Bhagawan has to attend to. But at the same time, I also realized that Bhagawan is also present in my heart. And that Sai within is somebody who I can be possessive about. And Bhagawan encouraged me to build that connect within. And it is during those days that a particular bhajan became very, very special and dear to me. And you may have heard this bhajan. Antaranga Sai, अनाथ नाथ साई, दीन बंधु साई, करुण सिंधु साई, राम कृष्ण शिव शक्ति प्रेम रूप साई, युगावतार बाबा श्री सत्य साई, युगावतार बाबा श्री सत्य साई. Antaranga Sai, Anathanatha Sai, the Sai within, Antaranga Sai, the indweller. And there are many days when I had gone to the, to the terrace in the hostel, and I would find a corner and I would just cry singing this bhajan, because I was really missing Swami's, physical interaction with me. But then I reconciled myself to the fact, saying that no, Swami, the Swami outside possibly is not meant for me, but the Swami within is a Swami for me, and I should, I can be very possessive about the Swami within, and it's okay to be possessive because that Swami within is available for everybody. So the one within me is exclusively for me. And somehow I'd reconciled to this fact, and I had, kind of from my conscious memory, from my conscious prayers, given up this, this thought that Swami should, I should receive that sparshan, and that Swami should place his divine hands on my head. But I think it was a Vijay Dashami day. It is a day which is part of the famous Dasara celebration, where we worship the Divine Mother. We also worship the momentous occasion when Lord Rama vanquished Ravana, symbolizing the victory of the good over the evil. And there was a program going on in Sai Ramesh Hall in Brindavan. There was a very famous singer, a professional singer who happened to be performing on the dais in Sai Ramesh Hall, the dais from which Swami would give his discourses. And that day, Bhagawan had chosen to sit in the, amidst the students. He was sitting as part of the audience, and he was facing the dais. And I was, kind of far away from him. But Bhagawan was seated in our midst. And on that day, after a long time, for no reason, this sense of regret, saying, Swami, you have never, touched me on my head. That gnawing feeling came back again. And that, and despite whatever I did, despite me telling myself, saying, see, you can't do this, you're going back to your old habits, you can't get possessive about Swami's physical presence. Despite me saying this to myself a lot of times, I just couldn't curb that feeling that day. And I, broke down into tears, and I just didn't know what to do. I just couldn't, kind of control myself. And it kind of, it went on that way, like a loop. The program got over, and Bhagawan was walking towards the dais to bless the artists. And there was, that wonderful path which was laid out for Bhagawan, that carpet was laid out for Bhagawan to walk. But what Bhagawan did was he chose not to walk on the red carpet which was laid on, and he cut a random path like he many often does. And when he cut a random path, and like the sea would part when the Lord wills. So when he started walking, the sea, the entire ocean of students seated there just kind of parted as he walked, and Bhagawan just walked down the path. And as Bhagawan got closer to the dais, he was also getting kind of physically closer to me. And to my utter delight, I realized that I was actually seated right on the edge, which means Bhagawan is going to pass right next to me. And just as Bhagawan was nearing me, what he started doing was, he kind of started pretending, I would say, that he needed to support himself by holding on to the students while he walked. So there were students who would put their hands up, and then, he would hold the hands of the students and he would walk. And as he passed by me, I was also holding my hand up. He did not put his hand on my hand, but just as he was passing me, and just as he has passed me, he put his hand firmly on my head as though to support himself. But then, I was in a bliss of tears because he had actually answered my prayer. That was, an instance where I realized the power of prayer. The feeling was so strong, and Bhagwan had immediately responded. It was as though Bhagwan had given me a free sample, a free test drive to show me the power of prayer, and told me that, now I've given it to you free. And now, of course, by your own effort, cultivate the power of prayer. Because it is not that the Lord does not listen to, the Lord listens to everything. He hears even the footfall of an ant. And Bhagwan had given me that beautiful experience that day. Bhagwan is so merciful that he did not stop with that. He decided to grant me the same experience once again. I just prayed, once, but then the experience came twice. I recollect one more experience where he granted this blessing to me, this blessing of sparshan to me. It was in the presence, the holy presence of the Sri Brindavan. Some of us boys had gone inside the Sri Brindavan to do some work. In fact, Bhagwan wanted to distribute some clothes to, white clothes to safari suits to the Sevadals in Brindavan. And we had been given the task of preparing, the clothing material. We'd done that, and then while Bhagwan was distributing the clothing material in the pathway which leads to Swami's residence, Sri Brindavan, the Sevadals were seated on either side, and there was just space for Bhagwan to walk in between. And each one of us were given a turn to carry the bundle of clothes. And, we would kind of carry it on both our hands and then stand in front of Bhagwan. Now, since both our hands were full, Bhagwan had to help himself by picking out each piece. They were neatly arranged in sets. Bhagwan had to pick up each set and then hand it over to the Sevadal. Now, my turn came. I went, and I am, I'm almost 6 feet tall, and Bhagwan is 5'3" without his hair, like he clarifies. And I had to kind of bend down. And I remember so close to Bhagwan physically that my nose was kind of touching his robe. And I was kind of walking backwards, and Bhagwan had to help himself. And I still remember Bhagwan did something which is divinely mischievous. What he did is, on one occasion, he did not pick up the set of clothing material which was right on top of the heap. Instead of pulling the one which is on top of the heap, he actually pulled the one which is beneath that. Now, if you pull the one which is beneath that, naturally the one on top is going to, fall down. And I could do nothing because my hands were full. And Bhagwan did that. And I could see Bhagwan consciously doing that. And nobody noticed it other than Bhagwan and me. And the moment he pulled, that set which is lying beneath, the set on top fell down Bhagwan's lotus feet with a soft thud. I just picked it up. He looked at me mischievously, and there was a beautiful smile on the face. And then he gave a whack on my head. And then he said, Dunaputu. And Dunaputu means buffalo. But there was a beautiful smile and a beautiful knock. But that smile and that mischievousness, I think, to me was an acknowledgement that he'd listened to the prayer and he'd granted this again. What I was asking for in terms of a sparshan, the blessing, through his divine hands. The Lord listens to everything. He listens to even the footfall of an ant. Let me narrate you one more experience, which is hilarious, which is amusing, but then illustrates the same truth. There's one of my classmates, and this again is during my Brindavan days, my undergraduation days. He had written a letter to Bhagwan, and there was a prayer which he wanted to offer. And in those days, it was kind of very common for Bhagwan to pick up letters from students. I know the law of probability doesn't really work with Bhagwan, but then if you apply a human monkey mind to it, it was very unusual if Bhagwan did kind of pick up your letters. You miss it one day, it's quite possible that if you carry a letter for darshan 3 days in a row, invariably, Bhagwan would pick up your letter. But this particular brother had offered this prayer in the form of a letter. He carried it to Bhagwan. But What happened is Bhagawan was simply not picking up this letter. And Bhagawan would pick up the letter from the student on his left, from the student on the right, but then would skip him. And this happened for so many days in a row. And when this happened for so many days in a row, he decided to introspect. He said there must be something basically wrong with this letter, because if Bhagawan is not picking this up, there's something wrong. Now, generally, once you've written a letter to Bhagawan and then, put it inside the envelope, now it's already offered to him mentally. So you don't, kind of open it and then, go through it again. But these were very special circumstances. And my classmate felt that it warrants, it behooves upon him to pick up the letter and then go through it again to see whether something is wrong with the letter. And dear brothers and sisters, when he opened the letter, to his astonishment, he found that he had made a grave mistake. So what was the mistake that he'd made? The mistake that he'd made is, instead of putting inside the envelope the letter that he had written to Bhagawan, by mistake, he had actually put in his accountancy mark sheet, his accountancy, answer sheet, one of the assignment sheets, into the envelope. It was actually not the letter to Bhagawan. It was something which was supposed to be submitted to the teachers in the college. And he had by mistake put that in. And the letter which he had really written for Bhagawan was lying somewhere else in his cupboard. He realized this mistake. He picked up that letter from the cupboard, put it inside the envelope. He carried it for darshan. And that day, Bhagawan came with a smile and just picked up the letter and then walked away. Listens to everything. He listens to even the footfall of an ant. Let me narrate you one more very interesting experience. There are days when Bhagawan apparently wouldn't kind of speak to us. And he would, pretend to be upset with us. There's absolutely no anger in Bhagawan, but to transform us when he wants us to implement in our life, to practice in our life what he's taught us, he would pretend to be upset with us. And it was one of those occasions. And sometimes it would stretch for days together. And on those occasions, when Bhagawan doesn't just seem to be responding and talking, and, the Cold War, so to say, is on, we would have to find some way of breaking this stalemate. And how do we do it? We boys had our own way. We would sit and plan, and the normal procedure was we would all plan, and during darshan, after Bhagawan had finished the darshan and granted interviews to devotees, and when he would come out casually, we would kind of surround him and then latch on to him and say, please Swami, please Swami, please Swami. All that would happen. And he would say that, then he would say, what happened? And said, Swami, please talk to us. And then Swami would say, no, but I'm talking to you. Then he'll say, no, not that way, Swami. Please talk to us, Swami. We are sorry, Swami. Please, Swami. Please, Swami. So that please, Swami operation would happen. Now, not very easy to do, because when we try and do that, Bhagawan would kind of escape into one of those rooms, and then we wouldn't be able to latch on to him. So we would, kind of plan it like a war operation, sitting in the dining hall in the hostel. There were a group of boys who would sit down, sometimes even drop a chart saying, you group of boys would come from here. The other group of boys would come from here. And then after that, Swami would, kind of move into the interview room. So the bhajan boys who are sitting in the bhajan hall would just kind of come out and then would block the interview room so that Bhagawan doesn't, kind of slip into the interview room. We had meticulously planned all that, and like many other occasions in the past, we'd done that. But that day, with this plan completely ready, we were sitting there, and it was supposed to be a top secret, known to nobody. Bhagawan had finished darshan, he had gone for interviews, and after he came out, we were supposed to execute this plan. But just before we could execute this plan, Bhagawan had finished an interview. Bhagawan called one of the elderly devotees inside. And this gentleman went inside. He came back in just a minute. He sat down in front of the row of boys who were the first movers in this plan, who were supposed to execute this plan. He was supposed to move in first as part of the entire Please Swami operation. And this gentleman just turned around and told us, he said, Swami asked me to tell you what you boys are planning to do today, don't do today. What you boys are planning to do today, don't do today. And this was supposed to be a top secret. Only we knew what we were planning to do that day. Saying, don't do today. Now, this gentleman had no clue of what we were planning to do today. He was just carrying a message which said, Swami is telling me to tell you that what you're planning to do today, don't do today. Because there was an eminent personality, a guest who had come to Prasanthi Nilayam that day. And Bhagawan is very conscious about how his boys and students appear in the presence of others. So he did not want that to happen that day. And we thought it's a top secret. The Lord listens to everything. He listens to even the footfall of an ant. But while all these experiences are narrated, a thought which can kind of creep into our mind is saying, brother, you're narrating all this, but then all this happened in Bhagawan's physical presence. It happened when he was physically there. But then can this still happen? And that takes me to the second segment of what I want to share today. Because we are in that era when we go to Prasanthi Nilayam, you walk into the Sai Kulwant Hall, all that you see is what you believe is an empty looking chair. All that you see there is Bhagawan's Sannidhi. You do not see that beautiful form, that delightful form, which can keep your eyes transfixed. So the question is, yes, the Lord listens to everything. He listens to even the footfall of an ant. But then can that happen even now? I've not had an opportunity. There are people who possibly are listening to this. Many young Sai adults possibly are thinking, or probably others are thinking, saying, hey, but I have not experienced this. I've not had the opportunity to be in Bhagawan's physical presence. Can I experience this love? Can I experience this truth in my life? Can I experience his touch in my life? And thus I thought I should add this segment to Samarpan today. But before that, let me share with you a part of a song. In fact, this form of music is called Qawwali, which was popularized by the Sufi saints in India. Let me sing to you the beginning portion of a Qawwali, which we would sing in Bhagwan's physical presence, which talks about, how our heart would yearn when he was not present. The irony was these lines were sung when Bhagwan was actually sitting in front of us. But what we sang in those days was this. O mere Sai, मुश्किल है जीना तेरे बिना, मुश्किल है जीना तेरे बिना, महबूब आलम, ये दिल लगे ना ओ तेरे बिना, तुझे सलाम सलाम ओ साई मेरे, सोने लगे जिंदगी तेरे बिना। ओ मेरे साई, मुश्किल है तेरे बिना जीना तेरे बिना. It says, O Sai, मुश्किल है जीना तेरे बिना. O Swami, it is very difficult to live without you. So we are in that era when we believe that Swami is not there amidst us, at least not there in our physical presence. So the question is, brother, can we still experience it? If I've not even seen Bhagawan, can I experience it? Can I experience the truth that the Lord listens to everything? He listens to everything, including the footfall of an ant. And thus, let me add a couple of experiences which happened after Bhagwan's Mahasamadhi, after he decided to give up his physical form. I was sitting in the airport in Chennai and I was waiting to take a flight. It was an early morning flight, approximately around the same time in India. It's the early morning hours in India now. And it was approximately the same time. The airport was not very crowded at that point of time. In fact, the portion of the airport which I was sitting all alone. And for some reason, I was extremely disturbed that day. So disturbed that I was praying to Bhagawan and I said, Swami, I'm feeling very, very disturbed, Swami. And I said that today I really, really need to experience your presence. And in my heart, I was saying, Swami, you must show me a sign of your presence. And one of those rare moments in my life when I was saying that, Swami, I must experience your presence right now, right here, and I must experience the sign of your presence. And even as the prayer kind of resonated in my heart, there was this strange conviction, 100% conviction, without an iota of doubt in my heart, that I would see a sign. And I don't know how that came. It just happened that day. And I had just uttered this prayer sitting in a corner in the airport in Chennai, sitting all alone. The airport seemed to be deserted. And after I had said this prayer and opened my eyes, I instantly saw, a gentleman walking towards me. And as the person drew closer, I suddenly realized that this person is somebody who looked very familiar. And to my delight, dear brothers and sisters, I realized that I was looking at one of my classmates from Brindavan who had done the undergraduate program along with me, one of my batchmates. And I was actually seeing him after almost 2 decades. And the moment you see a Sai brother who studied along with you, memories of your time with Bhagawan floods back, and then suddenly that feeling of despondency, that feeling of despair is replaced with joy. And that's exactly what happened. The sign I was looking for was right in front of me physically. And of course, we spoke. It was a joyful moment, and we spoke to each other. And then finally, I asked him, saying, "Brother, what kind of brought you here to this side of the the airport?" And strangely, he said, "Brother, I don't know. There was no particular reason why I came here. I was just sitting somewhere else. My boarding gate is elsewhere, but I just felt like walking towards this side of the airport." He just couldn't explain why he did that. And that was for me a wonderful experience. This was, remember, brothers, mind you, this was after Bhagawan's physical presence. We had lost Bhagawan's physical presence, so to say. And even at that point of time, he had listened to the footfall of an ant. Let me narrate one more experience. Again, it was one of those days where I had to take a flight. Bhagawan says that the human life is filled with fears right from birth to death. And one of the many fears that I had was the fear of flying. And that's because once I had been through a life-threatening, so-called life-threatening flight. And ever since that, sometimes, the fear of flying really kind of grips you. I was supposed to take a flight. It was monsoon time. The weather was not looking great, bringing back not so pleasant memories of that terrible flight which I had had a few years before. And again, I was really scared. Now you're a grown-up adult and you can't speak about your fears to your family. So you just kind of pray within and you're telling Bhagawan, saying, "Swami, I'm really, really scared today. The weather doesn't look so great." And I said, "Swami, I'm so scared. My heart is full of fear." And then my prayer at that point of time is saying, "Swami, all throughout the flight today, Swami, because I'm feeling especially scared today, So all throughout the flight today, Swami, let there be something, some sign which shows me that you're there with me all throughout the flight. There needs to be something which helps me experience your presence all throughout this flight today. Again, one of those moments when I felt that I'd prayed my heart out. And then I boarded the flight. And as I settled down and the flight was taxiing and had, after that had got airborne, and the cabin crew the flight attendants were moving around, dear brothers and sisters, I noticed something very unusual. I noticed the name, they have their badges, of course. I noticed the name of one of the flight attendants. And can you guess what the name of the flight attendant was? The name of that flight attendant was Swami. Yes, you heard it right. Swami, Swami. Not Swaminathan, not some Swami, no prefix, no suffix. It was just Swami. The first time I actually saw a flight attendant who was named Swami. And now let me tell you something which is even more stranger, or which appears even more stranger. This flight attendant was called Swami, and this was not even a gentleman. The flight attendant was a lady. Now, if you're familiar with names in India, and people from India who are connected on this call would instantly know this. What's the probability? What's the probability that on a flight you would find a flight attendant immediately after you prayed to Swami, saying, Swami, let there be something in the flight, a sign which reminds me that you're there with me all throughout the flight. Your presence is there with me all throughout your flight. What's the probability that you would find a flight attendant who's named Swami? And what's the probability on earth that Indian parents would name their girl child as Swami? And that's a name which is, kind of given to boys. There are other names, of course, there are names which are given, there are common names which are used for boys and girls in India, but Swami is definitely not one of them. And this was so beautiful, and that reminded me of Swami's presence all throughout the flight. And naturally, the fear vanished in a second, because the moment you experience Swami's presence in your heart, abhaya happens, and bhaya just vanishes. And this again happened in an era when Swami's physical presence was not there. So to all my young brothers and sisters who are here, and to the many other Sai brothers and sisters who possibly may be grieving, saying that, I did not have this opportunity to see Swami physically. I never visited Prasanthi Nilayam during Swami's physical presence. The thought I would like to leave you with is that, Swami is not that 5'3" form. The Swami we adore is definitely not that 5'3" form. And he can be experienced even today, because he is present within and he is also present outside. Antar bahishcha tat sarvam vyapya narayana stitaha, as the Shrutis, as the Vedas declare. The Lord is present both within and the Lord is present both outside. The entire cosmos is suffused with the Lord. And Bhagawan himself has confirmed this. So even now, we can be that ant, and the Lord will still listen to our footfall. Now, let me get into the next part, the last part of what I wish to share, the third segment of this Samarpan session. We talked about, some wonderful experiences in Bhagawan's physical presence. I just now narrated a couple of experiences which talks about Bhagawan's omnipresence even now, when we think he is physically absent. But then that brings us to the third point, saying, yes, Bhagawan, we know you are still there. But then how do we experience your presence? Brings to my mind the, a wonderful episode, an experience which happened in Bhagawan's physical presence, but has a wonderful message for the current times. There was this brother, student brother, who was a wonderful singer. And on one of those days, bhajan sessions, he had sung a beautiful bhajan. And that day, a great Indian musician, an Indian musician, a maestro, happened to be there in the audience. He was so impressed by this brother singing that he approached this student brother after the bhajan session and said, Beta, he said, son, you sang so beautifully. You've got a wonderful voice. And he made an offer. He said that, see, I stay in Pune, and Pune is a city close to Mumbai in India. And he said, I stay in Pune, and if you are willing to come and stay with me in Pune, I will personally teach you, Indian music. I'll teach you classical music. Now that is a great offer for any lover of music. That would, they would consider it a great fortune, because generally maestros of, that stature would not easily accept somebody as a student, and they would definitely not come forward and offer this. So this brother felt very privileged, but then he was still doing his education in Bhagwan's institution, and he felt that, you just can't walk away from the institute without seeking Bhagwan's permission. So when he got the opportunity, he went to Bhagawan and said, Swami, I want to, kind of stop my education here, and I want to go to Pune to learn music under this maestro. Swami said, no, but why do you want to do that? He said, Swami, because I'll get better at singing. And then Bhagawan says, why do you want to get better at singing? He says, Swami, I want to get better at singing because then I can sing bhajans better. And then Bhagawan says, why do you want to get better at singing bhajans? He said, Swami, so that, I can please you. And, like a mother who does not want to lose his child, Bhagawan says, no, but I'm already pleased with your singing. So you don't have to actually leave me and go and learn music and come back. And, while all this is happening and there's a back and forth and there's an argument which happens, as to why he should and should not leave. And finally, the student brother places an argument. He says, Bhagawan, but you are omnipresent. You are anyway present everywhere, all throughout the universe. So how does it really matter whether I am in your physical presence here or I'm in Pune? Because you're there everywhere anyway. And when he said that, there was a solemn expression on Bhagwan's visage, on his face. And Bhagawan said something which is extremely powerful. He said something which is extremely profound. He said, Bangaru, I am present everywhere. Every inch of the universe I am present. In fact, the universe is my manifestation. I am present everywhere. But the question is, can you feel me everywhere? And that's the problem. Bhagawan is present everywhere. Bhagawan is present sitting, listen to the satsang. You know that he's right with us right now. He is a silent listener to every conversation. He is part of our life. But the question is, how do you establish that inner connect with Bhagawan? How do you constantly experience his presence? And can I be the ant to which Bhagawan listens to even now? And how do I be aware of the fact that Bhagawan is constantly listening to me even now? How do I stay connected? Now, I believe that this inner connect is something, or the route to this inner connect, the path to this inner connect is something which will happen through directions from Bhagawan himself. Bhagawan has clarified many times that his connect with each of his children, with each of his devotees, is heart to heart, love to love. It's one-on-one. For each one of us, our connect to Bhagawan is unique. I firmly believe that broadly our paths may be similar, but I'm convinced that it is never identical. And Bhagawan has confirmed this. Bhagawan has says, Chaipatti kapadute vratamu naku, which means I'll hold you by the hand and take you. So it's like you go to Prasanthi Nilayam and say, hey, where's the Western canteen? Like the others, Bhagawan wouldn't tell you, okay, go straight, turn left, and then take a right, you'd find that building. Bhagawan says, I would actually hold you by the hand and lead you there. Chaipatti kapadute vratamu naku. That's the vrata, that's the vow that he's taken upon himself. And the guidance that Bhagawan would give each one of us is direct, and you would get it directly from him. And thus, I would restrict myself to things which Bhagawan has said in his discourses, the general pointers that he's given us. So, how do you experience his presence even now? How do you experience that connect even now? Let me share with you a few things which Bhagawan has shared. There was one of our student brothers who, after finishing his education in Swami's institution, just before he was leaving, asked this question to Bhagawan. He said, Swami, I'm in your physical presence now, but now I'm going to leave the portals of this institution. And when I'm far away physically from you and I can't see you, how do I ensure that I maintain this constant heart-to-heart connect with you? And in response to his prayer, Bhagawan gave an answer which I believe is meant for all of us. Bhagawan said, Bangaru, if you want to maintain an uninterrupted and eternal connect to me, then consider me as your guru. Let me repeat this. He said, consider me as your guru. In the beginning of the Samarpan talk, I narrated this, I shared this beautiful hymn which says, prayer which says, Tvameva Mata Chapita Tvameva, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva. We associate with Bhagawan in different ways, as a father, as a mother, as a friend, as a relative. And all those are true. Each one of us have our own unique way of connecting with Bhagawan, and I think we should continue to connect with Bhagawan the way we connect. But when Bhagawan says, consider me your guru, I think there's a powerful message there. Is when you connect with Bhagawan as your guru, then he automatically becomes all of this for you. Because a parent may not always be a guru. A mother, may not always be a guru. A relative may not always be a guru. A friend may not always be a guru. But a guru is a father, a mother, a friend, a relative, and is everything. And the guru is God himself. And this is a very powerful statement because, even the scriptures say that even, the so-called human gurus, divine personalities, it is said that they do not seek their own salvation till they ensure that each of their disciples are liberated. Imagine if that is true of human gurus. Imagine about the Lord himself when he assumes the role of a guru. Which means you may not achieve your goal of life in this birth. God forbid, Swami forbid if that happens and you're reborn, Swami will find you and he will drag you into his fold. The moment I say, Swami, from this day, you are my master, you are my guru. And I am your disciple, I am your student. And that way, all of us have an opportunity to be a Sai student. Remember, a Sai student is different from a university student. So, all of us, irrespective of where we are, have this opportunity to be a Sai student. So Bhagawan's directions, Bhagawan himself says, consider me as your guru. But what do we mean when we say, consider me as your guru? I think the first thing is, if Swami is the guru and I am the student, to be the student, the basic qualification, the eligibility, the act which I need to do is to attend to his classes regularly. If he is the teacher and I am the student, I need to be part of his class. And Bhagawan has enabled this, has provided this wonderful opportunity. 24/7, almost 24/7 today, you can actually use your Radio Sai app on your mobile. You can tune into the discourse stream and listen to him, even today. And imagine, dear brothers and sisters, if we were to make this a daily practice, like you would all the young Sai adults here. Imagine like we would attend our academic courses regularly. And Bhagawan has a very important subject to teach us. The subject, if we know which, all other knowing automatically becomes a part of this, the subject which solves the very riddle of life. And Bhagawan is the teacher, and he takes classes 24/7. It's possible to log in. And I've had some wonderful experiences. I will not get into those. If you make that a regular practice, And what would happen is you would tune into Radio Sai Discourse stream, and a lot of times you would hear Bhagwan actually telling you something which is pertinent to that exact moment of your life, what you need for that point of time. Many a times Bhagawan has promised us that he would give us a version of the Bhagavad Gita which is custom made for us, which is meant for us at that point of time. Heart to heart, love to love, direct connect. I will not get into those experiences, paucity of time. But then please try this out. This is a wonderful experience to try out. Dear young brothers and sisters, please do try this out if you're not already doing this. And you'll find that Bhagavan can talk to you one-on-one even now. You can still be that ant to whom he listens to. He listens to even the footfall of an ant. And you'll experience the touch even now in your life. One more point important pointer which Bhagavan gives us is, if you consider him as your guru and you are the disciple, what's the other responsibility that you have? There was this Sai sister who again graduated from the university, Bhagavan's university. Swami granted an interview to her along with her family. And during the interview, Bhagavan turns around and says, ask me anything that you want, and then I will grant it to you. Now here's God asking you what you want, and then you can ask for anything. But this sister had the wisdom to ask for something very precious. She said, Swami, please grant me devotion. That's the gift that I want. And everybody thought that that was a wonderful thing to ask for, but then Bhagwan's reaction was most unexpected. He turned around and said, no, you're asking for the wrong thing. And the sister was surprised. She said, Swami, I'm asking for devotion. And you're telling me I didn't ask for any material riches, and you're telling me that I am wrong. And you're saying that I'm asking for the wrong thing. And then she said, then Bhagavan, please tell me what I should ask for. And then very sweetly Bhagavan says, Bangaru, you already have devotion. And that's why you're sitting in my presence. That's true for all of us. If we are part of this satsang today, dear brothers and sisters, the young Sai adults who are here, and all of us, if you're part of this satsang, it's because you already love Swami. You already have devotion. You've made this choice. You could have done so many things, but you've decided to be part of this satsang. And that's why you're here. But the point is, what should you ask for? Bhagavan says, don't ask for devotion. Ask for obedience, unflinching obedience. And that is Bhagavan's message to us, if you have to be kind of constantly connected. So one is, I attend his classes regularly. I tune into the discourse stream. That's one way to do it. You could have your own way. I'm just suggesting one method which kind of has worked for me, but you could try your own method. But one is to absorb Swami's message in whatever form, in whatever method which works for you. The second is unflinching obedience to it, to make it a part of your life, to make your choices, your daily choices based on those. And you'll find that there are innumerable opportunities to do that, right from morning to evening. For example, Bhagavan would say, let me just quote one. Bhagavan would tell us that, his morning ablutions, when he would brush his teeth and he would wash his face, though there was running water, Bhagavan would always, always collect water in a vessel and then use it. And when some of the student brothers asked him, saying, Swami, why do you have to do that when there's running water? He would say that, it's because I need to be sure about how much water I'm using, because water is a natural resource which is meant for the entire world, and I need to use it responsibly. And thus Bhagavan says that, to keep a tab of that, I do this. So next time, brothers and sisters, you open, the tap in the morning to brush, when you remember this message, you'll only open it half. And opening this tap half and using water judiciously, you would be knowing that you're doing this in abidance to his message. And that is a small example of obedience. And remember, every single thing in life, you could actually do it that way. Just because somebody does this, he does not become a great devotee. Just because somebody wears whites, he doesn't become a great devotee. Just because somebody chooses a particular diet, he does not become a great devotee. Just because somebody decides to be clean shaven, that doesn't make somebody a great devotee. But if all this is done because I want to please the Lord. Like Bhagawan says, Sarva Karma Bhagavat Prityartham. Swami, I'll try and make my life your message. I will try and make my life a reference book to your message. Then that becomes a method to connect with the Lord. And that becomes, a way to constantly establish this inner connect. It's 7 o'clock, and I know I have run out of time, but I'd like to ask Brother Bharani if I can still speak to him. Brother, are you okay if I take 5 minutes more? Because there's one important thought which I thought I should share. And if I do have time, I'd like to do that. Brother, can I go on for 5 more minutes? Okay, I can't hear him. So I am presuming that the silence is a yes. Okay, so let me narrate one last episode and then I'll offer this session at Bhagwan's lotus feet. And I want to share this because I think this is one of Bhagwan's key messages when it comes to establishing inner connect and devotion. There was this wonderful dream that I once had after Swami had, this was of course when Swami was there in his physical presence, but then a dream which I can never forget. It was early in the morning in India when I had this dream. And I will give you the gist of this dream without getting into too much of detail. In this dream, I found myself in Bhagwan's interview room in Prasanthi Nilayam. Bhagawan and I were alone together. Bhagawan was seated on his chair in the interview room and I was seated on the floor. And Bhagawan was having a conversation with me. He was asking me what I do. And I said, Swami, I work in a bank. And he asked me what I do in the bank. And when I was a manager, a branch manager in those days, when I mentioned that to him with a lot of motherly pride, his face swelled with pride. And he was saying, oh, you're a manager. And he was so proud about it. And then suddenly he switches, the topic to my singing. He says, you sing, right? I says, yes, Swami, I do. And then Bhagwan, kind of steps down from the chair and then he squats with me on the floor. And I've never seen Bhagwan squatting on the floor. And he was squatting on the floor right next to me and says, sing. And he asked me, what are you going to sing? And for some strange reason, brothers and sisters, in the dream, I said I will sing a particular song, which we used to in those days as a community of brothers, students, we used to sing this group song before Bhagwan. Not necessarily one of my favorite songs, but I just don't know why I chose to sing that song in the dream that day. I said, Swami, I'll sing this song. And Bhagwan says, great, sing it. And then, Bhagwan just pushes in a harmonium from the side, and harmonium appears. And Bhagwan himself plays the harmonium. I still remember Bhagwan giving the lead for the particular song. It's still, kind of clear. It rings in the ear even now. And the song which I sang that day was this. Teri hai zameen, tera asmaan, tu bada mehrbaan, tu bakshish kar, sabhi ka hai tu, sabhi tere, khuda mere tu bakshish kar. Now, this is how the song begins. Now, after the song, the next stanza of this song is, is not something which I sang in the dream. I skipped the stanza and I directly went on to the next stanza in the dream, which was unusual. And that particular stanza is this. But important point is when I started singing that stanza, Bhagwan started swaying from side to side. And he sang these lines along with me as though to underline these lines. And in hindsight, dear brothers and sisters, I think he did that because it contained a very important message. It contained his definition of devotion. तू चाहे तो हमें मारे, तू चाहे तो हमें रखे, तेरे ही हाथ से साई हमारे भाग है लिखे. It says, तू चाहे तो हमें मारे, तू चाहे तो हमें रखे, तेरे ही हाथ से साई हमारे भाग है लिखे. It says, Swami, if you so will, you can let me receive blows from life. Let me, let me be hit. Tu chahe to hame mare. Tu chahe to hame rakhe. If you wish to, may I be saved, may I be caressed, may I be sheltered. But irrespective of whether I receive a blow or whether I receive a caress, तेरे ही हाथ से साई हमारे भाग है लिखे. Swami, may I be constantly aware of this truth that the script of my life, whether it's a blow or whether it's a caress, is written by your hand. And whether it is pleasure or pain, whether it is victory or whether it is defeat, whether it is success or failure, whether it's appointment or whether it's disappointment, whatever it is, Swami, may I have the wisdom to accept it as your prasadam. Because whatever happens in my life, Swami, is your script. It may be my own karma because of it is my own karma because of which it is happening, but then you have allowed it to happen. You are orchestrating it. You are orchestrating it in a manner in which it is most beneficial for me, and I may not understand why it's beneficial for me, Swami. Thus, let me just accept it as your prasadam. And just like in India, you say you never say no to prasadam. Irrespective of what I go through in my life, let me just put my head down and say, Swami, whatever this experience is, sweet or sour, painful or pleasurable, whatever it is, let me accept this as your prasadam. And that, Bhagawan says, is the way to remain constantly connected with him. That, Bhagawan says, is obedience. Because practically when you do this each time in your life, in every single moment of your life, irrespective of what you're going through, brothers or sisters, we tend to think of him. And then we become the ant which is constantly connected to him. The ant which is aware of the fact that its footfall is listened to by the Lord. Because the Lord listens to everything. He listens to even the footfall of an ant. And this is a truth which can be experienced even today. With these words, I offer everything that I've said at Bhagwan's lotus feet. My apologies, Bhagwan, that I have overshot time by 8 minutes. Bhagwan would always want us to start and end on time. But kindly pardon me, Swami. This is something which I wanted to share as part of the satsang today. And I offer this too at your lotus feet. Jai Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, brother. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the lovely talk. On behalf of our Toronto family here, we thank you for taking efforts in delivering this talk in such early hours from India. I know it is Brahma Muhurtam for you. It's like Suprabhatam, but thank you so much. I would like to quickly summarize, the takeaways with a common corollary that is known in our student circle, the 4 cars of Swami, on which every devotee picked up by Swami travels along. The first one is Chamatkar. When you started saying about your mother's cyst disappearance and about how Swami has taken that miraculous turn in your lives, it reminded me of the Chamatkar on how Swami enters each of our lives, irrespective of where we are. And as you said, nothing escapes his attention, even the footfall of an ant. That kept ringing again and again. The Veda that says, Sahasra Sirsha Purusha, Sahasraksha Sahasrapar. Who can escape from him? The second card that we all know is Sanskar, the transformation. So when you narrated about your pining for Swami, you're singing Antaranga Sai so sweetly. and how Swami answered your question by creating a random path, just like always, how Swami walks through our life and makes those impactful situation and gives us that touch, that physical touch that you pined for. That is sanskar that I saw there. And as you traveled, you also gave me a new meaning of the third car, the Paropakar, where you said that helping ourselves by experiencing His presence constantly is the true service. And everyone who reaches this milestone becomes a student of Sai. Truly, experiencing Him is the real help that we can actually do. And that is true Paropakar. And truly it is said, Para plus Upakar. And the final car, the Sakshatkar, we can only make it by making choices with unflinching obedience to our inner Sai. And I'm sure there will come times when we all would reach that stage of Sakshatkar where we and Sai are one. Devotee and God are one, just like the ant and the sweet becomes one and the same. Thank you again, brother, Biasi brother, for this heart-touching talk. And thank you to all our listeners and viewers who have been part of this journey. Praying to our dearest Mother Sai, the Tribhuvana Palini, to grant good health and happiness to all the beings in these challenging times across the globe. Thank you again. Jai Sai Ram.
Thanks for that beautiful message of 4 cars, brother. Lovely. And thanks for helping me learn something new today. And I think with these 4 cars, it's time for a Jai car of our Bhagawan.
Definitely.
Jai Sai Ram.
Jai Sai Ram. We'll end.
शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की।